Hey everybody, welcome back to Around the Emirates podcast with Sara Mousa, where I speak to guests from across the UAE about topics you want to hear about. Today I'm joined by the formidable Candice Braganza. Hi Candice.
Hi, Sarah.
So good to have you on the show today. I'm
Oh,
super
pleasure.
It's always a pleasure to host amazing creatives like you. So guys, I'm super excited for you guys to hear Kenneth's story. She is a photographer and she is founder of Sculpt 25, a really cool company that focuses on the positioning of brands and people as experts in the industry and scaling their businesses. That sounds like a really cool concept. Please, Candice, tell me your story and what got you started.
When someone asks me, tell me a story and where I started, my first question is, how far do I go? Because my journey has different layers. Um, to start off with, I actually studied psychology and I majored in psychology. Yeah, and it's far from what I do now, but funny enough, it was quite recently that I realized how valuable that is, especially when it comes to personal branding
Yeah.
and talking about people's personality and all of that. So from there, I moved to HR, and then this was around COVID. I used to do drop shipping on the side while I had my 9 to 5. And I adopted my dog and I wanted to give back to rescue agencies in UAE. And I thought, instead of doing it from my savings, how about I build a product and then push the proceeds towards helping different rescue centers in UAE. And I did that. And that was supposed to be just a passion project. It was never supposed to be a business. It was supposed to be one product just done, more of a passion. But people very quickly started asking me, what's next? What's the next product? What are you going to be doing? And there was a lot of support from the community. And I decided to then launch an e-commerce platform, and I think Sculpt 25 was born through that because while I was launching that platform and I ran that for a year, I was producing my own products. I was talking to manufacturers. I took 6 months out to learn how to do marketing and that basically I used to do with HR as well, because part of what I did was employer branding. So everything kind of tied up together and sometimes you don't even see it happening. But when I launched that business, what happened is I started stalking other UAE brands onto my platform as well. And every time we did monthly shoots, I would do shoots for some of the other brands that I had under me. And I think it just went from there where I had people asking me, hey, can you do shoots for me as well? I started off with product shoots. And I was like, wait a minute, I have people asking me to do this. This is something I actually enjoy more than sitting and talking to suppliers and managing shipping and operations and everything else. I really enjoyed the marketing side of it, the photography side of it, the social media side of it. And I realized quite quickly that I was good at it as well. And I think when you have those two things that click, I'd say run with it. And that's what I did. So there's definitely different layers. It's not like, I just woke up and I said, okay, I want to, launch Sculpt 25. I think a lot of it came from me just doing what I did and demand, and then the meeting of the two basically.
I love that. I love that you kind of harnessed something that you're already very good at and something you already enjoy and decided, hey, like there's actually a demand for this. People actually like what I'm doing. I'm doing a pretty good job at this. Let me see how I can make money off of it. Because there's always that saying, right? If you're good at something, never do it for free. So you pretty much nailed that one on the head. And in the process of kind of going from kind of psychology to HR, and now Sculpt 25, what do you feel were some of the kind of key challenges that you overcame?
Oh, I think there are quite a few, if I'm honest, because even when I launched Sculpt 25, I started off as a photographer, and a lot of people still associate me as a photographer. I think scaling that towards an agency model, that was a challenge. And I would say one of the reasons that actually happened is because while I was doing photography, I was working with amazing people, like amazing brands and amazing people. And the one thing I noticed is a lot of brands and people, me included at that time, we would confuse activity with progress. And what I mean by that is I do shoots, right, as a photographer. And two things would happen. People would come in and be like, hey, we need a shoot with no strategy behind it. I would execute the shoot, give them amazing pictures. They'd walk away with, whether it's personal branding, whether it's product, they'd walk away with amazing photos, and then they would start posting them online. But you wouldn't really see progress in terms of how quickly their business would be scaling. And I saw this loop happening client after client, basically. And I've seen the difference between brands that have other elements connected and brands that are only taking content and posting it online and expecting their business to scale, right? So there's a lot of other factors that go. And I was working with very different type of clients, like high-end brands that were doing it what I call the right way. They were doing influencer marketing, they were doing PR, they were doing offline marketing. There were many other channels going there. And versus clients that were only coming to me for photography and then taking it and then doing their own social media, or not having a strategy behind it, or not really having a clear message as well. And that's one of the reasons why I started to scale Sculpt 25 as well, and started to basically want to offer more to the clients that I was working with to actually be able to help them scale.
I think that's really cool. I think you stayed kind of flexible and open-minded as you created this concept. It wasn't just, okay, photography, post your photos, done. It was, no, they need more positioning. They need more marketing behind what they're doing. They need to understand how to build their persona and their brand. So it's really cool that you were able to bring something to the table, even though it may have been a little bit maybe outside your comfort zone, or a little bit of something that you weren't expecting. You were still able to think, oh, hold on, there's a catch here. These guys don't really know how to get the most out of this, like you said, activity versus progress. And I'm curious, Candice, what kind of experiences were inspiring or unexpected, or something that's kind of caught you off guard?
Um, I would say when it comes to working in UAE, especially as an agency, I feel a lot of people probably don't understand how agencies work. And I think the initial part of the biggest challenge was the communication. You're not just delivering work, but you also then have to communicate and educate people in terms of how agencies work. The smallest thing as what raw files mean, or what the process is like. So I think in when it came to my scaling of my business as well, the journey, the key challenges were, one, communication, and then also I think communicating to people what scaling a business actually means. And it's not just visibility, right? So there's a lot of difference between clarity and visibility. And it comes down to, again, confusing activity with progress. I think content creation especially in Dubai has such a has such a strange meaning to it that everyone just thinks, oh, get a cool reel done, or get some sick editing done, get some hooks and sounds, and the visuals should be amazing, and then you go on and keep posting that. But a lot of times there's no clarity behind the messaging. And I think the biggest challenge for me through this entire journey is actually having to push back with clients and be like, no, this is not what we're going to do, or this doesn't really work the way you think it's going to. And then really kind of step back and look at what our messaging is. Do we really need to be loud? Or the channels that we go through, do we need to be on TikTok, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, or do we actually just focus on one? So I think the biggest challenge is being able to convince people, or rather communicate the value of actually doing something that is a little different than what everyone else in the city is doing.
That's a really good way of putting it. I think we just want to put everything out there at the same time. We want to, there's a phrase, cut through the noise, but in reality, it's such a saturated market. Everyone's doing almost the same thing. How do you actually get people to get their attention, essentially? How do you get people to listen to your story? How do you get people to connect to your story? Like I saw on your website, I think there was one of the points on your website was like, okay, you have like a photo, for example, but how do you actually connect that to the audience with the channels that work best for you and for your product? And I think it's really cool that you're getting people to think smarter and not harder, and not just, publish a reel every other day about kind of being at the beach in Dubai, and doing something that's a bit more kind of substantial. I love that.
Yeah, yeah, and I think a lot of it also then you touch on to the ethical side of marketing as well, because one of the biggest thing is, oh, let's just get a cool hook in, and a lot of times, especially with what's going on right now, my gosh, I've seen so many brands kind of use the news template to get more attention, or kind of like use, yeah, I've seen a little weird stuff happening. I think recently there was a recreational activity as well, that they actually said something like breaking news, people went missing, but then, and that was the reel, but then the caption underneath said that, oh, people went missing because they did not want to go home because the party was quite cool. And this is in Dubai, and the comments were fire. People kept picking on how insensitive it was. But I think when it comes to people wanting to go viral or get more followers or get more reach, it comes down to what hooks are we going to use, or how are we going to make this catchy. And a lot of times there's a fine line between, ethical marketing and kind of just crossing that step just a little bit to get attention. So I think, yeah, when it comes to challenges, sorry, I think it's really trying to make people understand that no, this is not the way to do it. Even though it might seem easy, and even though it might seem, oh, this could get a lot of traction, what's the value of it at the end?
I really appreciate that. And I think that's kind of a very nice segue into my final question for you today, Candice. You've talked a little bit about ethical marketing. You've talked about the importance of what you're presenting, actually connecting with your audiences in the right way. You've talked about making sure that you are harnessing the right resources and the right channels that work best for you, but also at the same time having a, let's say, more relevant and appropriate message to share. What word of advice would you want to leave with the listeners today?
Um, I think this is something that I have personally experienced for myself. I think who you partner with really shapes how far you go. And this is me talking even from a client perspective. I remember I had a client that once said to me, I'm not just picking you for a shoot because you're good at photography, but because through the shoot and even after the shoot, I get to talk business with you. Basically, and she said this at the end. She was like, we spent about half an hour post shoot just talking about marketing and talking about her business and what she's doing. And she's like, I just got a whole consultation from you after the shoot, and it was her that made me go on and actually start consultation as part of my services. um, so for me, what I really learned is the right people, if you have the right people around you, it really kind of pushes you to operate differently, and it can really stretch your mindset as well. It's not just about, it's more about how they elevate the way you think. And I think for me that's been the biggest advice, both sides, in terms of a client choosing who to work with, and in terms of me choosing the clients that I work with as well. Because initially, when I started my business, success looked more like volume. How many shoots am I doing? How many projects do I have? How many clients do I have? Now it's more in terms of quality. It's who am I working with? How far do they show capacity to scale their business? What is their mindset like? How is it going to actually, how is this partnership actually going to push both of us forward? So I think for me, that's the biggest advice, and on who you partner with.
I love that. And I love that you positioned it very rightly so, not just in terms of a partner in a business, but also the types of clients you partner with. I think we focus so much on kind of the income and the revenue, which is understandable, that we don't think about like the types of partners that actually work for the business models that we have. So I really appreciate you kind of sharing that final message with the audiences today.
Perfect. My pleasure.
Thank you so much for your time today, Candice. I really appreciate it. And hey, guys, if you want to check out Sculpt 25, Candice is on Instagram. Go check it out.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Candice. Have a great day. Bye.
All right. Bye.